Hi, it's Scott. ROCKFILE back with another podcast review for you. Going to talk about The Mummy, the original Mummy from 1932. As a movie collector and a movie lover, I want to get like the original monster movies in 4K in these Steelbooks. And some of them come out in Best Buy and then been re-released at Walmart and whatever. But The Mummy just got one, and it's Walmart exclusive. And I was walking through the store, and there it was. The Mummy, 1932, you can't really watch it by today's standards. But I really enjoyed it because this movie is way ahead of its time. In the special effects, the makeup effects, the plotting, all of it, they were really attempting some things here. Well, the movie only had a budget of $196,000, which was a lot of money back in the 30s. Karl Freund, this was his first movie, but he was a cinematographer. He worked on Metropolis, the first Dracula, the year before. He went on later in his career to work on I Love Lucy, the TV show. So there you go. But he was known as a cinematographer, and this was his first directing job. You watch this movie for Boris Karloff. The makeup effects that he endured, he calls this the most trying experience of his entire career. And for a guy who played a lot of monsters, that's a lot to say. But it was hard. It was a long day of putting the makeup on all day and then working all night and then taking another couple hours to take the makeup off and then starting it all over again the next day. But the results are all there on the screen. When The Mummy opens, you see you see the little vignettes and stuff. But the first major scene is Boris Karloff as the Mummy. And he's in his sarcophagus, and the scientists are studying and making notes and discussing how great a find this is. I was blown away by the makeup effects even now. Eventually, when the curse happens and he comes to life, and I'm sorry if I'm giving spoilers on a movie that came out in 1932, but the curse is enacted and he comes to life, and it is one of the most amazing scenes I've seen in an old black and white movie. It's so realistic as he very, 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 very slowly opens his eyes and starts moving, and the years of dust and his skin and everything's cracking and the bandages that he was wrapped up in, and it's jaw-dropping even now. Now, watching this in 4K on modern equipment, it looks fantastic from a distance, but you get up close. This was an early film, 1932. Obviously, it's square, on your TV. We have the black bars on right and left side, but it's comparable to Dracula, Frankenstein, and the other of these classic movies I've watched recently. I don't know that I've ever seen this movie, honestly. I'm a big fan of the Brendan Fraser movies. They kind of went off the rails towards the end. I even own the Tom Cruise Misfire just because I wanted to see. I got it really, really, really cheap, and I wanted to see how badly they misfired that movie. And man, that could have been a great movie. All the elements were there, but they were trying too hard to do too many things. The long story short, it all started with this. And even though this wasn't as successful as the previous movies like Dracula and Frankenstein, it was still very successful and spawned a creation that we still celebrate on Halloween today. They're still remaking movies. There were a ton of Mummy movies, Mummy's Hand, Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, all that kind of stuff happened after this. So as an hour and 13-minute film, it's definitely not hard to watch. It looks great in 4K. The mono soundtrack sounds really good. It was a DTS HD lossless, but mono spread into 2 channels. And on my system, it looked like it spread into 3, which was nice. You get a nice front stage, but not, no Dolby Atmos surround sound or even 5.1 for this movie. Like I said, the movie there are a lot of extras on the film, and I won't go into great detail on those, but they make it worth the purchase of the movie. This movie is available not in the Steelbook, and it's pretty cheap. Matter of fact, Black Friday will be coming next month. You should be able to get some of these old monster movies for $10 to $15 on 4K. If you want a definitive copy of the movie that would stand blowing up to the biggest screen we can buy these days, I would upgrade. These are quintessential classics. My next one I want to get is Invisible Man. I don't think I have that yet. But anyway, I thought Mummy was a really good movie. I thought the extras were fantastic. I learned not only a lot about how the movie was made, why it was a big deal, but there's a lot of stuff about the producer, Carl Laemmle Jr. He really did a lot for movies. seems like everybody that worked on some of these earliest films all became just icons in the industry that pushed things forward. But then when you see, like, he was the first guy to open up a movie studio to have people come take a tour of it. And there actually had stadium seating for people to watch these, especially when the movies were silent. They would get people to cheer on or boo the bad guys, and it would spur on the actors to give better performances and that kind of thing. But the movies were silent, so you never heard that. It's fascinating. And the extras, again, going into the great detail about Boris Karloff's makeup and how they filmed the movie and where they filmed the movie and all that. This is one of the better old movies. I mean, I couldn't believe I'm watching this from 1932 and it's holding up. Sure, if you want to see something wild and Egyptian, watch Moon Knight from Marvel or something like that. But if you want to see how these icons of cinema began, I always like to go back to the original one. Really enjoyed Dracula, even though it's not a perfect movie. Neither was Frankenstein, but it was even better. Bride of Frankenstein, there's a really good one. And this was up there with those. I really enjoyed the film. Glad it's in the collection. We'll go back to the extras more than the movie. But a lot of people haven't seen this original version of The Mummy, and it must be an iconic character if we're still celebrating it every time Halloween comes around. Universal Studios Halloween nights always have a mummy along with the other witches, goblins, Frankensteins, and whatever. So long story short, it's worth the upgrade. And if you collect Steelbooks, it's a nice design from Alex Ross. The artwork is so good, it looks like a black and white picture. Very much matches the Creature of the Black Lagoon that came out recently, which is also a really great one to own. So anyway, trying to keep with the Halloween theme, I watched the original Mummy movie and came away a big fan. And kind of look at the rest of the Mummy movies. One of the things about the movie that I didn't know or remember is that there's very little mummy in the movie. And again, I don't want to get into spoilers, but we see him as the mummy at the beginning, but then he kind of approximates a human. He still has kind of crackly skin, but he looks more old than mummy-ish. And everybody accepts him as this Egyptian expert on things. And eventually they figure it out, and there's actually some special effects and a visit from a otherworldly being. And this movie really does go far beyond what movies did back in 1932. So, great example of early filmmaking that led to what we have today. Check out The Mummy from 1932 and get back to the roots of cinema, or at least horror cinema. By the way, speaking of horror, there's a scene, they show a flashback on how he became a mummy, Imhotep, and it shows him being wrapped up. That's as bad as almost like a bone tomahawk. If you've ever seen that movie kind of scene, it was like, oh my God. I mean, it looks like they're really wrapping that guy up. It was horrific looking. I can only imagine what it was like in 1932. Pretty dark. A couple scenes like that in the entire film. But overall, it's a lot of stuff about curses and strange beliefs and trying to find your love from the past and trying to execute a plan to bring her to life, so to speak. The Mummy was a much deeper dive into classic cinema than I thought. You might want to check it out. Again, Carl Frun directed it. Boris Karloff stars in it. Zita Johann was the female lead, and it was really good. Oh, the laughing dude, the guy that helped out with the dig, that was pretty creepy too. Check out The Mummy. It's available on 4K now. I'm Scott. I'm ROCKFILE. More podcasts are on the way. I hope you have a very happy Halloween. I'm sure we'll talk between now and then.